Hey everyone, my name is Dylan Adams, and for today's video, we're going to be talking about acoustic slide guitar. So just like I did my slide guitar 101 basics and where to start video, this is going to be a tutorial on where to start with acoustic slide guitar specifically. Now, of course, almost everything that I talked about in my original slide 101 video and all of my subsequent slide tutorials will apply to playing slide on acoustic guitar. But there are certain special considerations to make for playing slide on acoustic and certain positions and areas to play on the neck that kind of work best. So I'll demonstrate those things for you guys, and we'll talk about how to choose the right acoustic guitar for slide, what slide to choose for playing on acoustic, what tunings to use, and at the end, I'll give you guys a couple song recommendations to start out with. So here we go. So the first choice you have to make is what guitar are you going to use? And your main two choices are between a standard flat top acoustic and a resonator guitar. And I guess you could play slide on an archtop acoustic, which could be cool, but I don't have one of those, so we're just going to talk about these two today. So option one, of course, is just to use a normal flat top acoustic, which is totally fine. And just like with electric guitars, I'm of the opinion that pretty much any guitar can be a slide guitar. That said, I tend to prefer smaller bodied acoustic guitars just in general, but especially for slide. To me, they have a little bit more of a mid-range focused, kind of punchy sort of sound and less bass and less treble, which is a good thing because slide can kind of introduce a lot of treble and be kind of tinny sounding on the wrong guitar. So while you certainly can play slide on a dreadnought or a jumbo or anything like that, smaller body guitars tend to be a little bit better suited to it, and that's just the sound that most of us are used to hearing anyway, because a lot of the classic old Delta blues guitarists would use smaller body guitars, so it just kind of gets you closer to that authentic blues sort of sound. If you're on a budget and you want a good quality, great sounding, small bodied acoustic guitar, I would highly recommend this one right here. This is the Alvarez Delta 00. This isn't sponsored by them or anything. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. I bought this a few years ago, and you know, I'm not an acoustic connoisseur by any means, and this is the only standard flat top that I own, but I love this thing. It's totally awesome. It's nice and lightweight. It's resonant. It sounds good to me, and it plays great. It has that small body sound without being too boxy and too kind of like junky, trashy sounding, like some small body, cheaper acoustics can be. Your other choice is to use a resonator guitar. So there is a whole world of resonators out there. There's all kinds of different varieties. There's spider cones, biscuit cones, tri-cones, national style, dobro style, round neck, square neck. So there's a ton of different options out there, but for the purposes of this video, and if you are just a normal guitar player looking to play normal slide and you're not specifically interested in playing lap style dobro, then just go with a round neck. But regardless of the type, resonators of course have their own special unique sound. They all have that kind of distinctive metallic honkiness to them, and they're loud. There's a lot of misconceptions about resonators. People think you have to put ultra heavy strings on them, that the action is super high on all of them, that you can only play certain specific genres with them, none of which is true at all. You can have totally normal gauge strings on a resonator. This has 12s on it right now. The action on this is actually a little bit lower than on my flat top. You can play it totally normally. Slide and non-slide, so they are more versatile instruments than you might expect. And again, if you're looking for a resonator on a budget, then I would highly recommend going with this one. This is the Gretsch Boxcar resonator, and again, no sponsorship, no affiliation whatsoever. I bought this several years ago, but this, in my opinion, is the best resonator in its price range. It's, again, nice and lightweight. It sounds better than any of the cheaper resonator guitars. The setups can be a little bit hit or miss on them when you get them brand new, but they can totally be set up to play well with slide and non-slide. And overall, this is a personal preference kind of thing, but if I had to pick between a resonator and a flat top, I would go with the resonator. In my opinion, all of the resonator varieties just sound better for slide than a typical flat top does. You know, they're very forward in the mid-range. And to me, tonally, that makes more of the fundamental kind of stick out, as opposed to with the standard flat top acoustic, you get a lot more like kind of extra high-end harmonic kind of ringiness going on and just extra noise in general. So for that reason, and just because this one has fretboard dots and the other one doesn't, I'm going to stick with this guitar for the rest of the video. All right, next, what slide should you go with? I'm not going to go into as much detail as I did in my Slide 101 Basics and Where to Start video, because pretty much all the things that I said in that video are going to apply here as well. But the key differences with acoustic slide are you might want to go with one that is a little bit longer than what you might use on electric, so you can kind of get the full 6-string coverage there if you want to. And you also might want to go with one that's a little bit heavier than what you would use on electric guitar, because you can, first of all, get away with it on acoustic because typically you're using a little bit heavier strings than you would on electric, and the action's going to be a little bit higher than you would normally have on electric. And also, you want to be able to get as full and as loud and projecting of a tone as you can with acoustic slide, and having a heavier slide is going to help with that, whether it's glass or brass or whatever. Just something that's a little bit heavier tends to be a good option for acoustic. And regarding the material of the slide you choose, so if you know me, then you'll know that I kind of have the unpopular opinion that slide material doesn't really matter that much in terms of tone. But I will say on acoustic guitar, it is a little bit more noticeable. Glass in general is a little bit warmer. Brass is generally a little bit brighter. But again, to me, it's a pretty subtle difference, but it is a noticeable difference on acoustics. So if you want a little bit warmer tone, maybe go with glass. If you want a bit brighter, more projecting tone, then maybe go with brass. When it comes to which finger to put the slide on, again, refer back to my Slide Guitar 101 Basics and Where to Start video. Same exact thing is going to apply here. Next, string gauges. So to me, string gauge and tuning go hand in hand. So if you are tuning a little bit higher, so kind of more into like the standard tuning or open E or open A sort of range, then I wouldn't really go any higher than 12s. So it doesn't matter if you're using a resonator, a flat top acoustic, you don't need to go with crazy super thick strings for those kind of higher tunings. Again, you go to the store and you see resonator guitar strings and there's something like 16 to 60 something. You don't need to get those strings if you're playing a normal round neck resonator guitar. Those are only for dobro lap style guitars. You don't need super duper heavy strings on a resonator or for slide in general. If you're tuning down to open D, D standard, or open G, then I would say go with 12s or 13s. And if you're going even lower than that to say open C or open B or B standard, then you can go with anywhere from 14s to 16s to anything like that if you're tuning really, really low on one of these guitars. But again, you don't need super heavy strings for tuning in that normal kind of standard tuning range. So now the last thing to consider before we start playing is which tuning are we going to use? And so for me personally, this is an interesting topic because as a lot of you will know, I'm primarily an electric guitar player. And when I play slide on electric, I almost always use standard tuning or some lower version of that, so D standard or C standard, but always standard tuning intervals. But when I'm playing acoustic slide, that's a different story. I tend to use open tunings a little bit more when I'm playing acoustic for a few different reasons. One is that I'm typically going for a little bit more of a traditional old school blues sort of sound when I'm playing acoustic slide, and open tunings just tend to be a lot more conducive to playing in that style because that's just what it was originally played in. And also, it's generally easier to accompany yourself when playing slide on acoustic if you're using an open tuning as opposed to standard tuning. You can utilize a lot more sort of open droning strings. With open tunings, you can play full chords with just the slide. Now, if I'm playing with someone else on acoustic or in an acoustic band, then I'm more likely to just use standard tuning like I normally do. But for playing by yourself, open tunings tend to be the way to go, in my opinion. And again, just like my Slide 101 Basics Where to Start video, I'm going to go with open D tuning for this video. And I'm going with that one because open D and open G tend to be the most popular tunings for acoustic slide guitar. And in my opinion, open D is easier to wrap your head around if you're coming from standard tuning than open G is. I know some of you open G guys are going to go in the comments and disagree with me. The argument is usually that your D, G, and B strings stay the same, so that makes it easier to get the hang of, but I disagree with that because, in my opinion, having the lowest and highest strings being your fifth interval instead of your root in most positions is just confusing. So we're going to go with open D. All right, so let's start playing some stuff. So just like on electric guitar and like I showed you guys in my Slide 101 Basics and Where to Start video, the first thing you want to get familiar with is the 12th fret box, and that is where you play this kind of thing. And since I already talked about it in my other video, I'm just going to go through it quickly here. So how I like to think of this kind of 12th fret box area is essentially just a shape in which to play the minor pentatonic scale. And in this case, it's going to be the D minor pentatonic scale. So without the slide, that box looks like this. And then you can try it with the slide as well. And so that is where you're going to play all of your kind of classic is all going to be in that little area right there. And that's a very important box to know if you're playing blues slide guitar. But for today's video and for acoustic slide in general, we're going to focus more on playing down here on this side of the neck and specifically using open strings. So that is where you're going to get this kind of a sound, right? So and particularly for acoustic Delta blues slide, a lot of that style lives down here in this kind of area. So let's look at a few different kind of options for scales and things that we can play down here in this position. First, let's look at a couple ways to play the minor pentatonic scale. So the interesting thing about playing scales down here in this position in open D tuning is that there are a few intervals where you can play them at the same octave but on different strings and different frets. And there's all kinds of different ways you can play the minor pentatonic scale depending on how far up you're going on each string. So here's a way we can just play the minor pentatonic scale in 2 octaves without repeating any intervals or anything. So I'll do that one more time. So that's one way we can play it, and so just kind of mess around with using that sort of shape and going. But again, that's not our only option for playing this scale. So now what I'm going to do is play through the minor pentatonic scale, but I'm going to play every option that I have on each string between open and the 5th fret. So that means there's going to be a few intervals in here that are going to be repeated because, again, there are multiple places to play the same notes on different strings in this position right here. But this is going to give you sort of the complete map of where you can play this minor pentatonic scale within the first 5 frets. So here we go. Now we'll try that with the slide. And that doesn't mean that we're always going to use every part of that scale in every position. It's just those are all your options for that area. So some examples of some open string licks that you could do in those areas are So just experiment yourself, kind of mess around with these different areas of this open position. And just kind of mess around, experiment, and see what you can come up with. Now, the final concept that we'll talk about today before we get into our song examples is playing scales horizontally. And again, I've talked about this in another video, so specifically my standard tuning slide part 2 video is where I've kind of delved into this in more detail. Today we're going to kind of adapt it to open D tuning, and specifically for this kind of old school slide blues style. And to start out with, you really only have to learn it on 2 strings technically. So first we're going to start with this high D string here, and we're going to learn how to play the minor pentatonic scale only on this D string going all the way up to the 12th fret. Essentially, this is going to be your pattern for that. It's going to go. So now let's try it with the slide. So start out just picking every note like that, but when you get comfortable with that kind of shape and where those notes lay out, then start trying to just pick the first note and slide the rest of the way up the scale as far as you can. And then back down, so pick the first note. And you want to be able to slide smoothly and evenly and cleanly between these notes all the way up the scale and not hit the frets and not have the slide kind of rattle or choke out the string. So spend a good amount of time just being very slow and careful and just kind of mess around with that on that one string for a little while. Just try and come up with some blues licks, some lines, so just experiment. You can go. And once you're familiar with that high D string there, now we can start to look at our high A string here. And so the pattern is going to look a little bit different on this string because we're starting on a different interval of the scale. So we're still going to be playing our D minor pentatonic scale. It's just now we're starting on our 5th instead of our root note. So that means the pattern is going to look like this. And then we can try that with the slide. So. And the main thing you want to be aware of is that your root note is going to be here. So that is where your D note is going to be on this string. So if you want to play any kind of licks where you're landing on that root note on that string, that's going to be the fret that you want to land on. So here's the cool part. You really only needed to learn those 2 strings and those 2 patterns because you have 3 D strings in this tuning. So you have a D here, a D here, and a D here. So everything that you played on this high D string is going to be the same on this D and then on your low D. You're going to play the exact same pattern on your 6th string, your 4th string, and your 1st string. And then the exact same idea for your 2 A strings. So you have your A string here and your A string here. So the pattern is going to be the same on your 5th and your 2nd string. So, and so as long as you can remember which strings are corresponding to each other and which positions go with which strings, then you can always find your way around on pretty much any string. We're going to leave out this F sharp string for now because particularly with this Delta blues style that we're going to look at, playing this horizontal scale stuff, you can really get by in this style just using the other strings and skipping over that. So finally, let's look at a couple songs we can learn. The first one is going to be You Gotta Move by Mississippi Fred McDowell. The more famous version of this song is going to be the Rolling Stones one, and it's pretty much the same melody, but we're mainly going to refer to the Fred McDowell version of it. So I'll go ahead and play the main melody of this song for you, and then I'll kind of break it down. So here we go. So that was the melody. That was kind of a simplified version of playing it, because the true authentic way to do it would be kind of with that sort of self-accompaniment rhythm on your thumb, which I gotta be honest, I'm not very good at. For now, we're just gonna mainly focus on playing this melody on the slide. That melody is actually gonna use the major third a little bit, which we kind of didn't really talk about with our minor pentatonic scale, but really all it is just you're sliding up to the 4th fret on this high D string here. So the melody starts out, so an open D string, and then sliding up to the 4th fret, then going 5th fret, 7th fret, so, and then we're gonna go, so we're sliding up to the 7th fret twice, so, and then we're kind of sliding back down to the 5th fret, and then hitting our open D string, so that sounds like, and then we're gonna slide back into that 4th fret. So then we're essentially gonna do the same thing again, but just slide up to our 7th fret a couple more times. And then we're gonna land on that 5th fret and play that a couple times. So. And then we're gonna jump up to the 7th fret and then down to the 3rd fret and then open string. So this whole time so far, we've pretty much just only been sliding on this high D string here. But now we're gonna incorporate the high A string, and we're gonna go open and then 3rd fret and then open D string, and then one more time slide up to that 4th fret. So that sounds like, and then again we're gonna kind of slide up approximately to that 4th fret. Doesn't have to be exactly there, but, and then we're gonna go to our high A string, 5th fret, slide down a whole step to our 3rd fret, and then pull off to play an open high A string. So and then the last part is just high A string, 3rd fret, then 5th fret, then 3rd fret, then 5th fret. So that whole last part is, so that's a great first tune to check out. Another one is going to be Keep Your Lamp Trimmed and Burning by Blind Willie Johnson. And so this one is going to be in the same tuning. It's going to be in that same kind of area, using the same concept where we're mostly just playing our melody on our high D string here and a little bit of our high A string too. It's a little bit more advanced than You Gotta Move, and particularly the Blind Willie Johnson version is pretty difficult because it has even more of that thumb accompaniment sort of thing, and it's fast. So we're actually going to play it more like the Tedeschi Trucks Band version. If you look up Tedeschi Trucks Keep Your Lamp Trimmed and Burning on YouTube, there will be several live videos of them playing it, and they slow it down a lot. And Derek Trucks doesn't really do that thumb accompaniment thing. He just kind of does more of these like slaps against the strings like that, which is a little bit easier than kind of getting that coordination going. So we're going to look at it in the way that he plays it. So I'll go ahead and play it for you guys. So you can see that one has a little bit more going on. We're using more of the fretboard, and there's a few particularly kind of fast licks on individual strings, kind of that. So if those are a little bit difficult to get the hang of, then no worries. Just try and get through it as best you can. All right, so that does it for today's video. I hope that was helpful for you guys. And that was just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to acoustic slide guitar blues. Of course, there are more tunings, there are more styles, there are regional ways of playing different things. There's a ton of different artists you can check out. I mean, definitely check out the Blind Willie Johnson catalog, Mississippi Fred McDowell catalog, Sunhouse, Bucka White, Robert Johnson, of course, Charlie Patton. The list goes on in terms of this older Delta Blues acoustic slide guitar sound. But I hope this was a good introduction for you guys and a way for you guys to start playing some slide on acoustic guitar. The links to all of my other slide tutorials that I mentioned are going to be in the description of this video, so go and check those out. If you could please like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell notification icon to get notified whenever I post new videos, that will help out my channel a lot. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, take it easy.